In this video, we are going to talk about going beyond testing with CI/CD, and I specifically titled it Beyond Testing because I am showing you in this course how to establish a good solid test practice with your Java code and your Spring code. I'm talking about going on beyond testing, and I'm going to get into some of the stuff a little bit in the course. It is not the primary of the course. I could actually do multiple courses on these topics, so obviously, I can't cover everything in one huge course, but I do want to establish a baseline and get you thinking about how things can evolve. Now, continuous integration is a development practice that requires developers to integrate code into a shared repository several times a day. Each check-in is then verified by an automated build, allowing teams to detect problems early. And this is directly from ThoughtWorks. They are one of the premier consulting agencies around software development. Martin Fowler, brilliant guy, been around for a long time, has contributed a lot to the industry. He says continuous integration doesn't get rid of bugs, but it does make them dramatically easier to find and remove. So to continuous integration, basically you're going to set up a CI server. You're going to check into source code. CI server is going to detect that. It's going to check that out and build it in an independent system. And if you break the build, that's very bad. So, and this is how large groups of developers work together. They are all committing against a common code base, and that code base is being watched by CI servers, which are automated. So whenever somebody checks something in, the code gets checked out and the tests get run. And if something breaks, everybody gets an email saying that the build broke. So very important thing. And in this course, I'm showing you how to set up those tests so you get that baseline. You can't do CI if you don't have any tests. Nearly pointless to do CI. So if you have a good test coverage, you get a lot more benefit out of doing CI. So very important thing to remember. Now some CI practices, and again, this is from Martin Fowler. He's got this up on ThoughtWorks as well as in some blog posts. Some of the practices is to maintain a single source repository with microservices and build dependencies. This gets a little fuzzy. You may have multiple source repository, but things have evolved where we can actually do build dependency. So if you change out project A, I know that project B and C have dependencies on it. So we need to rebuild those and retest those at the same time. So that's where we get into the automation of the build. We want to make that self-testing, your build self-testing. And that's the tools that I'm going to be showing you all in this course here about self-testing your code. Every commit should build on an integration machine. This is an independent system. And then another best practice is to fix broken builds immediately. I've been in development shops where some minor project breaks and Fred, who worked on it last, just went off on vacation and people leave it broken. So that's not a good thing to do. You want to get things fixed quickly. So what happens if you don't get it fixed quickly, somebody else can check it out, not be paying attention, not running their tests like they should be, and then just make it worse. So best to fix things quickly. And then remember, keep the build fast. You want these building very fast. And that's why I stressed on having a lot of very light, fast unit tests. And this is the ThoughtWorks terminology, is to test in a clone of the production environment. You do want to have your test and integration test being as much closely as possible to what you are using in production. Now, you don't need to buy the same hardware, all the massive hardware that you're going to have for a production environment. But what we have now, if you're running against MySQL in production, something like test containers or Docker, you can bring up MySQL pretty easily to test against. Make it easy for anyone to get the latest executable version. And this is where most companies are going to be setting up like a Nexus repository where the build artifacts will get published and you can easily download them. A very important thing, especially for regulatory compliance, to be doing stuff like that where you have effectively what's a immutable build artifact. So if you're running in like a financial services company, auditors are going to want to see a very robust history. So, you committed code, your test ran against it, and that specific version of the artifact got checked into Nexus, and that specific artifact got deployed to production. So very, very important. Auditors do like to see that stuff. And finally, everyone can see what's happening. Some shops will actually put up a huge monitor and show you the status of the build. And you might have 30 projects there, and if one of them goes red, you can see right away on that big monitor. I've been in shops like that. It's actually kind of cool. Now, let's talk about some of the tools that we have. common CI build servers. And I am not, absolutely not going to cover them all here. I'm just covering the major ones. Jenkins is probably by far the largest self-hosted one out there. There are cloud-based ones for Jenkins as well. Bamboo, TeamCity, Hudson. Hudson's still out there. A lot of people know that Jenkins forked from Hudson, so I got a little fun fact there. Back in 2010, I couldn't remember exactly where, but Oracle claimed a trademark on Hudson through an acquisition. People were worried about what Oracle was going to do to it, kind of like how we got MariaDB. So they forked it, which became Jenkins. So Jenkins is still very popular. A cloud-based CI, this area is really growing up. There's literally dozens of competitors out there. Travis CI has probably been around the longest and is one of the most popular ones out there. Their free model's a little funny. Circle CI, I like their free model a little bit better. Functionality-wise, I think they're pretty much on par. Somebody would probably say, oh, one's better than the other. I'm not going to get into too much of an argument there. They build Maven for me. I'm happy there, to be honest. Now, there's another one out there, CodeShip, GitLab CI. Another favorite of mine is AWS Code Build that a year and a half ago, I'm not sure if that existed. It's matured nicely, and there's like a dozen I'm not listing right now. So that's why I put many, many more. There's a lot of cloud-based CI services coming out there. Very rich competition in the space. So what I'm showing here is no means meant to be an exhaustive list, just to make you aware of the build server options that you're running. So if you're a company that you're hosting your own software or your own servers, you'll probably go self-hosted. A lot of people really love Jenkins. It's a very robust community around that. If you're doing a lot of Atlassian stuff, Bamboo is an excellent choice. A lot of capabilities there. TeamCity, also fantastic. So I'm not going to get into saying which is better. They all have a lot of really great capabilities. But the cloud guys, Neos have actually come up, and they're very, very capable as well. Next up, we need to talk about CD, continuous deployment. Continuous deployment will automatically deploy build artifacts after the CI test run. Now, this should happen with every commit. And I say should because sometimes, depending on your build system, you might set up a commit window where you have a quiet period of like 5 minutes. So if you're watching a repository, you say, okay, if there hasn't been a commit in 5 minutes, I'll go ahead and run it. So sometimes you can get multiple commits in there. This continuous deployment is completely automated. It may include a staging area, which additional automated tests run. I'd say may. The hard, steadfast DevOps guys say you must have additional tests run after deployments. Not everybody adheres to that. Some people just do a health check, make sure that it came up alive. So there's a lot of varying degrees here. And my next bullet point there is it is easily confused with continuous delivery, which it can be. I'll get to that in a second. For continuous deployment, one example, which I've been using a lot over the last few months, is AWS Code Pipeline. This is an excellent tool. It allows me to take a Spring project, set it up so it's inside a Docker container, and I can literally commit, and I have microservices deploying on AWS in 5-10 minutes. They go through, they use AWS Code Build, and then Amazon ECS automatically redeploys the latest image. So real slick stuff. I really like it. I might actually do a whole course on that, but we shall see if that happens. So my time is not always as much as I'd like it to be. So continuous delivery. This is often confused as well as far as the CD process. This process automatically delivers code changes directly to the production environment. I want to stress here it involves a high degree of automation and both testing and deployment. And you must have very, very mature processes. So this is really some of the more elite software development shops. It takes a lot to get this cooking properly. And I want to point out in some industries, this can be very difficult due to regulatory requirements where you actually need sign-offs on changes, like financial services, healthcare. I don't know, the regulations around those industries may not allow this. If you're a gaming company, you're probably not going to have a problem. I know photo hosting site Flickr, they adhered to this and they had this going very well, but they're just an internet website putting up pictures. So they have a lot less regulatory requirements than a bank or like a credit card company like Visa. Now, I also want to say this area is highly evolving. There's very few hard rules. There's no standard way. There's best practices that are maturing. a lot of opinions, a lot of lively debate. The tooling is also maturing. I mean, there's entire platforms getting built around this, a lot of competition to get to this point. What I've seen in the industry, there's a lot of custom code scripts, a lot of very small moving pieces. It takes a lot of skill to get it set up. But once it's set up, it works very well. So this is a really ideal model. There's companies that are deploying code to production 50, 60, 70 times a day, which is kind of crazy. But I do want to come back and say that it is a mature process. The reason for this lecture is I wanted to point out beyond testing, where it takes your code to the next levels. First would be continuous integration, sets you up for that. And then also continuous deployment, and then ultimately continuous delivery. But none of this stuff can happen without having a very solid and robust testing environment for your code.